And I have got one of the best experts on generating engaging content up in this area, Priscilla Smith. I'm going to let you give everybody your amazing background and then we'll start our conversation.
Thank you, Nico. Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Priscilla Smith. I am a UGC content creator, and I work directly with brands creating content to reach their target audience. And what I'll do with they'll send me products or they'll send me a script if they're trying to talk to whatever audience they're trying to talk to. And I'll read the script, and sometimes I'll edit and send the video forms to them. And then they take that video and then they execute it in their marketing ads. And the purpose is to reach their target audience in an authentic way and
Mm.
by connecting on a personal level, person to person. I'm not AI. And I get that question a lot. Maybe we'll talk about that later about AI stuff. But yeah, so I have been creating content for brands for a couple years now. And then this past March, I started it full time. And I absolutely love building relationships and nurturing those relationships because at the end of the day, I want them to come back and ask me for more work. And so there is just a lot that goes into creating content that is constantly evolving and revolving and growing. And so, yeah, that's what I've been doing. And my background is video editing, video content creation, and podcasts. As you can see, I've got like the fun video set, and then sometimes I'll
Oh,
go
that's so
out
great.
in the mountains and I'll film content in the mountains. So it really all depends on the brand that I'm working with.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you so much, Priscilla. And this gorgeous woman, she and I crossed paths at one of the largest technology companies in the world with a three-letter acronym, a huge, huge company. As you know, Change 3, we serve big tech companies like IBM and MediaCom and you name it. And so this gorgeous, intelligent person is also, had this great background in big brands, big companies. So let's dive in. Always when I have these events, this is our second. Every month, join us. We want you to join, like, subscribe, join the channel, and join us in the live discussion. We'll be moderating the chat. If the live stream is working, then we'll see if we can monitor the comments. If not, then please forgive us because it's all new tech. And that's kind of what you have to do these days. So what you heard Priscilla talking about is she does a lot with engaging authentic video and what you we kind of showed our peeked our hand a little bit because what we're going to be talking about today is how do you create an experience that gives people that same meet and greet feel like they met you in your office or you met them in theirs or they came to your shop and so they can start to feel like they know you or they know key decision makers in your company, and a big part of that is using things like video or podcast. How do you use social media? How do you use other platforms where you can share your content, your message, and do so in a real, authentic way that will inspire people, give value, and get them to engage with you so you can start the beginning of that journey together. So what I always like to do is rather than us telling you a bunch of stuff, I'm gonna show y'all some things that y'all told us. So we had about almost 60 executives. I'm gonna share my screen and forgive me if there's a bunch of weird stuff on the screen. We had about 60 executives. Let's see. Um, Share their perspectives on how they generally generate leads and get new introductions and how they also have that first connection. So let's look at this. So the first chart says, how do they generally generate leads or get those new introductions? Now, the audience for this are principally executives in smaller tech companies. So the majority of, not all of them are tech companies, but a lot of them are, I'd say 80% of them are in technology oriented fields. And that's kind of what Change 3 does. We serve tech companies, but we actually help all kinds of businesses grow happily. So I'm not surprised by these results, right? Top four, they call them, they have a meeting, maybe they start a relationship on social media, and then the rest are face to face. And the rest of this stuff, referrals, networking events, people coming to their office, paid media, really low. Doesn't surprise me because, when you sell complex technology solutions, when you sell complicated business services, people might see your ads and they might interact with your brand, but that's usually not how your relationships start. And when we look over at the second graph, it says, well, how do your potential customers first connect with you or your team? What's that first, what's the spark? What's that first part of the introduction? Email. So, oh my gosh, we're going to have a session on email later this year, you guys, because email is crazy, people. But email, so lots of us are still, we use email. I know folks feel like, oh, email's dead, but it's really not. If you're selling solutions, like in the case of these executives, they're selling complex business technology. Email is the best way to find those target decision makers that are in your target accounts, in the right location, in the right roles. And so I'm not shocked by that either. Inbound, that's very interesting. So again, right, you have your effective email, they're calling you, maybe they see your ads, right? Or maybe they met you somewhere and so they're giving you a call. And then the last one that I'll talk about is they joined an event like this, right? So we host these events not only because we love interacting with small businesses and we love to showcase experts in our network, but we find that this is a great way to start new relationships. So some of you guys might speak with me later. You might speak with Priscilla and me or Sandy. We're the actual people that we'd want to, if you had questions about this or you wanted to see how we could help you start real business relationships through virtual channels, we'd be the people you talk to. And webinars, hands down, are continue to be a really great way to engage potential customers, so long as the topic is something that is valuable, right? Useful. So that's the last bit of data I'm gonna share. The rest of this time, we're gonna be chit-chatting, y'all. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about, and the first question that I wanted to talk about with Priscilla is, even though the world seems very digital, there's still a lot of things happening offline, right? And as people are starting to think about, well, how do I start these new relationships in digital channels? I'm not a podcaster. A lot of our clients, I have a client that I was like, oh, can you join an event? We want to talk about their website. And she was like, thank you so much. I'm really honored, but I really want to be back office. Doesn't even want to be on camera. So if you're in that camp, you're like, I've got a lot of thought leadership. I've got really amazing experts, subject matter experts, that work for my company, but they not cute. They're not good on camera. You know what I mean? They don't have really great skill when it comes to like chit chatting with people, but they're really knowledgeable. Like, are they, can you have a podcast with those guys? Should they be doing UGC like you talked about? So Priscilla, tell me, how do you, if you find that situation, how do you solve that problem?
I've worked with a company, and she was actually the sales director of a home building company. And I really wanted to get her on camera talking about the products, talking about their business, their values. And she did not want to be on camera. She was she was so stressed out. I mean, just the day of. And so what I decided to do, because at the end of the day, I want her to be comfortable, and I want everything she's saying to, of course, be authentic and not so forced and stressed out. So what I ended up doing, and I have two approaches to this. The first approach is I said, all right, how about this? I'm going to keep the camera away and I'm going to have a mic on you and let's just talk. And so
Hmm.
it does get challenging to edit, but you hire out for people to edit, right? And so
Yeah, yeah.
I used her sound, her voice to talk.
That's a great
I used
idea.
B-roll, and I used from B-roll from the company. So this is also
Yeah,
very important, is when you're filming for your own company, is to use actual footage, real content from your business, not necessarily video
stock
stock
footage.
that you
Yeah.
can just download from the internet, because people can tell. Now, that's not a game changer or anything. You can totally do that. But that's what I ended up doing, just using B-roll. And so I was like, talk about, ABC, talk about XYZ. And so I ended up using those B-roll clips over her sound. So at least when someone walked in the door, they recognized her voice. And what I tried to do is
That's
I would
great.
I would follow her around with the camera, and I'd just be like, point, show me. And so all you would see would be the back of her head, pointing or whatever. And she loved it. She felt so comfortable. And then after she realized she wasn't totally on the spotlight, you could just hear how relaxed she was and
Comfortable. Yeah.
how comfortable she was. The second approach that I do with those who are okay with being on camera, but are really nervous about it, is instead of having them look at the camera and
Hmm.
talk about what they do, is to have them look away, or to
Hmm.
the side, so they're talking to somebody else. And
Hmm.
at that point, now you're kind of doing more of a podcast or just an interview.
Sure.
And so instead of them focusing on the camera, they're looking at
Yeah.
you and they're looking at your eyes, and your goal is to make them forget that the camera's even there. And
Yeah.
then you can edit everything out and just keep it rolling. And so those are the two
Yeah.
approaches when I work with companies who don't feel like they want to be on camera. You can go
Hmm.
with one of two choices, and you're still gonna achieve that authenticity, and you're still gonna achieve that authority in your industry, which is really what you want when you're filming content,
Yeah.
is authority in your industry.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. So if you guys didn't pick it up, right, what we're saying is number one, if you want to build those real relationships, it actually starts with people seeing you, right? Not stock images, not B-roll, stock B-roll. Those things are good and you can
Totally.
use them to create engaging content. But if your goal is actually really to start and build some new customer relationships, start that conversation, then you want to get your actual faces out there, right? Your key people who they're going to
Right.
talk to so they can see
I think
them.
it's reminding people that you're a person at the end of the day,
Correct.
and you're not just
Yep.
this brand, that everyone started somewhere. And
Yep.
yeah, having that relationship is reminding them that you're a human being, not AI.
Absolutely. So let's talk about some really basic ways, or not basic, some starter ways. So if you guys aren't producing this kind of content, how do you get started? So I'll tell you about our journey, and then Priscilla's giving you some ideas about how she gets her clients started with their journey. So for us, about a year ago, we said, okay, as the CEO of Change 3, I said, okay, I put my foot down and I said, all right, we're going to start this journey with virtual events. We support a lot of our clients doing all kinds of events, virtual and in person. And, we saw how they would use that to start relationships. We started using them for our demand generation services, and we saw how that started to, create a viable way for our clients to meet potential customers. So we said, okay, let's do it for our own business. Here's what I learned, and I'm going to share it with you guys. And you guys probably might know some of this already. It's harder than it looks, right? It seems like, okay, I can just do the one event and it'll be great. But there's like probably 400 things that you take for granted, or it seems small, but it turns out to actually be more important than you thought. Absolutely, you can use something like Eventbrite or Zoom, or we see a lot of small clients that use these platforms to schedule, communicate, and share their event, but they run into certain issues. Maybe they don't get a lot of signups, or maybe the few people that do sign up are people they already know, and right, so they run into certain tactical issues. And we discovered those things too. So it took several months. It took a few months for us to really get a good and solid program set up, work out all the kinks, and create a good experience. And now, after we've got it all set up and we're like, this is great, we got the YouTube channel, we got the video editor, and we got it all, and we've got it done where it's not horribly expensive. It's actually really affordable. Now they're like, oh, you got to do live streams. And so we're like, okay, like today, where we practiced today, we got everything configured to do live streams. But it may or may not be working as expected. And that's actually something that we're experiencing with starting relationships in virtual channels today. It's not polished. It's definitely not scripted, and nobody wants that. And that in some cases, like just being real. And I think my girlfriend said real and raw, right? Just be real and raw, and just, be authentic. I like your word, Priscilla. Just be authentic is what people are looking for, because they're going to interact with you and your brand in these different platforms like, LinkedIn or Facebook, or you name it. So what would you say about that, Priscilla? Would you agree about kind of our journey, and how do you help clients like us through a journey like that?
Yeah, well, and my journey is, I focus a lot with working, it's business to consumers, creating products where consumers are purchasing, and then when you do business to business, and how do you market that, and how do you market yourself for that business? Absolutely, live streams are so great. People love the behind the scenes content too. They
Fun.
love hearing how your business got started, how you launched it, what tools you use, and your biggest like pain points, that once you dropped XYZ, I don't know, then your business just skyrocketed. So when you're speaking business to businesses and you're getting started, the live streams talking about the behind the scenes that you don't get to see. Live streams are fun because you get to see the spontaneous, oh gosh, you remember that one time, and
Yes.
about that, versus on Instagram, everything's perfect on YouTube because you
Interesting. It's all
curated that
edited.
and you edited
Yeah.
it and you launched it, so
Yeah.
you are putting
Yeah.
exactly what you want people to see. But when you're live streaming, it's the funny, did you see, I'm doing it now, where it was an interview and a newscast and his kid walked in
Oh,
and he's like,
yes. That's going to be
you
me
know
one day. Yeah.
and that's
Absolutely.
what and you know what? That went everywhere.
It
People
went totally viral. Yeah.
loved that connection of, it was so funny too.
I appreciate what you just said because it gave me a new insight, which is, there's all this worry about live streaming, right? But what you just said helped me to understand why live streams are so effective because it's literally just real, right?
Right.
It's real. You're vulnerable, right? You're not scripted, you're not produced. You're just you, like it would if you met them in your office and you said, "Hey, how you doing?" Right? And your dentures fell out or something, but oh, well, excuse me, So,
Yeah.
same is true. I'm at that
Yeah.
age, y'all. Same is true with the live stream, right? You got that vulnerability, and I think that helps them to connect with you. Because I think a lot of you might have seen, as we set this event up, right? Finding common ground and finding a way to connect. So going live is a really great way to connect. But what about other ways? Like, I know some people who like, let's talk about platforms because, especially you brought up a great point. B2C, business to consumer, some of the folks on the call might be selling direct to consumer. Some of the folks on the call, especially you tech guys, are selling direct to business. So, where do you go? Can you, and I'd love your thoughts on this. I get this question all the time, so I'm gonna save my answer for the end. Um, but people are like, oh, I don't want to be on Facebook and I don't want to be on Instagram, like you mentioned. I'm definitely not going to go on TikTok and no way for X, but maybe I'll do LinkedIn. So what do you think? If you have this business who's got a personality and they're going to do some lives, they're going to do some video, where do they showcase that thought
I
leadership?
I think it's okay to diversify across different social media platforms as long as you're speaking to your audience that lives on that platform. So if you're on LinkedIn and you're bringing valuable content on how to grow businesses, on how to speak
Mm-hmm.
to other like-minded business owners, you can use similar content and change the wording a little bit for
Mm-hmm.
TikTok and speak to, like, you just have to change your approach on how you're going
Mm-hmm.
to speak to your audience, because at the end of the day we have the same audience, but it is different per platform. The way I approach Pinterest is different than the way I approach LinkedIn and TikTok. Now that's common, right? But for an
Yeah.
example, I work with a wedding a wedding venue, and they
Mm-hmm.
work with other vendors as well. So they're like, how do we
Mm-hmm.
speak to future bride and grooms, and then also how do we speak to getting florists,
Oh
or
yeah.
cake
Businesses, yeah. Mm-hmm.
businesses. So there is going to be a situation in your business where you're speaking to two separate audiences. And guess what? Pinterest is a great place for a wedding venue to be. And also
Yeah.
to brides and grooms, specifically on TikTok or Instagram, is different than how you would approach on LinkedIn. You're speaking to, like I said, the florist. You're speaking to, hey, you want
Mm-hmm.
to grow your business? Talking about how you can add value, but it's approaching each social media differently. is how you're going to create authenticity when you're approaching these social media platforms.
Is that going to be like a lot of work? No, that makes perfect sense. But is it like a lot of work? They're like, oh my gosh, I have to make the video. Now I got to make versions. Is that something like a professional could help them with? How do they do that as easy as possible?
Oh,
What do you recommend?
100%. I definitely recommend having someone help you. If you are a one-man show or a small business and you want to approach these different, I would recommend choosing one or two different platforms
Hmm.
and scheduling out. And so
Hmm.
I hire out. I am, one man show over here, and I'm expanding and I'm hiring out, and I'm hiring a video editor, and I'm hiring someone to schedule out my posts. So if you're growing and you want to scale your business, definitely need to hire out. But don't be intimidated by approaching the several different platforms and live streaming. And you create the content once, like what we're doing now is we're
Yeah.
talking and recording, but we can edit that differently and splice it up into the different platforms. So, but if you are a smaller business, one-man show, and you don't want to hire out, just focus on two different platforms and speak to them differently. And that's how I would approach that.
I love it. I love it. So let's summarize. So right now, most of the folks in this session are building relationships in offline channels. What we're recommending you do is figure out ways to amp up your thought leadership so you can make more of these kind of face-to-face introductions without having to meet and greet everybody live and in person. So you can think of live streaming, think of podcasting, think of videos, real and raw videos that are ways for you to make that early introduction and go, hey, how you doing, right? And for people to get to an idea of your character, your personality as an expert, the character and personality of your company without you having to shake all those hands up front. It's a great way to have scale, right? Meet more people. Now let's shift our attention to, okay, well, what if you're really great at it, right? You hire someone like Priscilla, you work with Change 3, right? And we gave you some great ideas, and you're getting, the phone's ringing, you're meeting a lot of people, and you haven't actually met them live. You maybe have talked to them over the phone. Well, how do you nurture those relationships? And do digital channels play a role in nurturing? So I have some thoughts, but I'm gonna always leave it over to my growth guru. So what do you think? How do you nurture? So, you made some great videos with Priscilla, and people are commenting in the social, they're engaging. How do you nurture them and like get them further down your progression path so they become your customer? What do you recommend?
Well, there's a couple ways. If you're using social media, for example, when someone comments on your post, responding with another video, commenting to that post is a
Oh,
great
interesting.
way
Yeah.
to continue that relationship, because then the person's like, oh, they're speaking to me.
Yeah.
Another thing too is email is such a powerful, powerful tool, and is email is a really great way to nurture that relationship and to touch base, but not just making sure that it's not just a blanket newsletter, but
Yeah.
talking to them by name, making sure the email is personal to get them to down the pipeline. I'm curious to hear
Yeah.
what you have to say, because I feel
Yes.
like I keep going to social media, and I need to like
Yes.
think bigger here for this conversation.
Yeah. No,
Help
I
me.
love it. Actually, I agree with everything you said. Yeah,
Okay.
like I think what we try to do is what we call full funnel marketing, right? And I think you and I have talked about this too. You use all your channels. So you use email, you use social media, you use, events and activities. But I'm a big one in, you think of it, the way I like to do it is, what if you were dating, right? And you go to the speed dating, or you at the club, you at the barbecue, depending on where you grew up, right? You went to the barbecue, you at the pool, whatever, and you see a whole bunch of people and you're like, oh my gosh, right? And you meet a lot of people. And there are a few that you're like, oh my gosh, I want to talk to you again. Well, you actually start to think about ways that you could like um, bring a smile to their face. Maybe you gave a gift, maybe you sent a little bit of something, you showed that you were, really knowledgeable about them. And so we're big believers in, like what you just said, Priscilla, the personal touch. We're big believers in you send some love, right? $10 at Starbucks, y'all, goes a long way to like giving somebody a great, a smile. They're like, okay. Do you know what I got in the mail the other day from a bank that's been really aggressively trying to do business with me? They sent me a payday candy bar. And I thought it was great. They put it
I
in
thought,
FedEx, so it got my attention, right? I thought it was all very smart marketing. I'm like, I'm stealing all this stuff. They FedExed it to me with like, like a folder and, their materials. And it was all stuff that I'd already gotten from the sales rep who'd already been talking to me and texting me and calling me and stuff. But in there was a payday, this candy bar. And I thought, that's funny, right? And how can I say this? Maybe it interested me so much because I'm a marketer, but I think it would grab everybody's attention because, like I said, it was FedEx, so you're like, oh, this must be important. So you definitely opened it.
yep.
So boom, you saw the brand, and maybe it cost $20 or whatever to do that. And then there was something in it, so you were like, what is this, right? And so and then you get this candy bar, and you're like, ha, that's funny, and it's a bank, right? So I really appreciated the pun, right? It's get your payday, you know what I mean? So I thought
I
that was
think
so much fun.
that makes me think of realtors are really great at marketing. And
Hmm.
when I bought a house years ago, this same realtor, they would leave, they called it pop by gifts, and they would
Oh,
leave a gift on your
interesting.
doorstep, and it was whatever season we were in. So I just remember March, St. Patrick's Day, and it had a
Uh-huh.
dollar scratch off. And on the note, it was like, we're so
Fun.
lucky to have you as a client. And
Oh,
I that was
fun.
so cool. And
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
all the time, like summer or like in the spring, it would like a seed packet, and it was like, we
Yes, I love
love
it.
growing with you, or is your family growing? Or I don't know,
I
something
love it. Yeah.
being top of
So
mind.
what's the insight? Oh, I love it, right? What's the insight, right? So these
Right.
things don't take a lot of money. They don't take a lot of time. They do take very good strategy and they take, a really good understanding of who's in your audience. But you can actually create a program. I won't say a program, but you can create like a set of little gifts that you have, little delights is what we call them. Um, and you can make it part of how you build these relationships. So let's say you're like, okay, Nico, I'm with you. I'm rocking with you, right? You're like, I'm going, I got this. And you go, okay, I'm gonna go make some videos, right? And I've got some thought leadership and I'm gonna share my thought leadership. So guidance. Always make sure that you're talking to your audience. I'm looking in the camera. Hi. Make sure that you've got something useful to share with them, right? And that you're thinking about your format because your video can be long form, like this one's going to be long. We're chatting, and for those who are in the discussion, hit us up in the Q&A chat. Pop a question in there so we can discuss it. We're going to have a poll for you guys as well, but make sure you're engaging your people. But think about that you can use that content later in your socials, like we talked about. And then start thinking about really interesting, simple ways to show each person, not the whole group, not the whole channel, not the whole audience, but each person that you're really trying to connect with them as individuals and you're getting to know them. For those of you who might be in my age cohort, okay, and some of this stuff is like not, in your usual vernacular, not in your usual routine of how you get to know people. Something that I've been doing is I've been watching a lot of gamers. I like to play mobile games, and my kids love to, and they're little. I have very young kids, 5 and 9, even though I'm old bitty, okay. But my kids, I've been watching these gamers and like in Discord, right? And they have these huge, they build these huge followings, and a couple of them, some of you might know, like Case O, I think is like, forgive me if I said this. This is a young man, so I might have said it might be something else. I might have said his name wrong. Maybe this old woman can't even say my name right, so I'm really sorry, dude. But bruh, but so he's a really popular one, right? And I've watched some of his videos, and they're hilarious. And the thing that I noticed is, his fans or his, members in his Discord community, they send him gifts, they send him packages, and he's a voluptuous individual, and he's always talking about how skinny he is, how he only had 13 calories, he weighs 119 pounds or something. It's hilarious. And his members are always roasting him about it. But the point that I wanted to make, the insight, because everything is an opportunity to learn. The insight that I learned is this man has millions of followers, right? But he's connecting with the ones who really engaging with him individually, like such that they're sending him gifts and he's opening the gift on camera and he's talking about it. He's mentioning their names, and they're building a relationship, like a relationship where people feel a loyalty and a preference. And so you might be thinking, oh, well, that's an influencer, right? You got all these influencers out there. I've seen, there's this girl with pink hair on YouTube that my daughter loves to watch, and she buys random things from like Wish and, TikTok and all these weird places. And then she tries them on and she's like, oh, look how cute. And she's like, oh, this isn't good. And same thing, she gets in her chat and she talks to the individuals and she messages them and she builds relationships. So a lot of you guys might be thinking like, wait a minute, I'm not an influencer. I'm not an individual playing mobile games. I'm not a pink-haired young woman, buying gifts. So how do I talk about my, polyfiber gaskets, or how do I how do I engage an audience about some kind of a business solution that's not particularly exciting to people who don't use it, or how do I have a conversation and how do I build that relationship? So the insight that I would say is, regardless of what your topic is, for your community of interest, it's super interesting to them. And the most important thing that I've noticed is, doesn't matter how many is in your audience. What matters is that you try to connect with each one of them individually. So you might send them a gift. You might say, hey, you won a lottery. Hey, raise your hand in the chat. So guys, that's what we're going to do now. Raise your hand in the chat. We've got a poll. Sandy, are you ready with the poll? And while the poll is up, I would love, Priscilla, for you to react to what I just said. So, like, can you do that? Get personally involved or personally engaged with people, in your comments.
Oh, absolutely. I think the key takeaway here too is consistency. Is
Oh,
if
thank you.
this influencer who you mentioned, the gamer, they were consistent and they did
That's
that,
right.
they started their channel with 0 followers once upon a time. And the fact that they posted consistently is what got them the growth. So if you're going to, whatever platform you choose to focus on, if you're focusing on LinkedIn, you have to be consistent. And the consistency is what you're going, where you're going to get a lot of relationships, because people are going to expect you to go on lives on Tuesdays, if that's what you say. People are going
Yeah.
to expect you to, and yeah, the gift part, sometimes people expect it, and then they're like, hey,
They
where's
really
my
want
payment?
that cookie. Yeah.
Right. And so that would be the biggest thing. If you're focusing on YouTube, stay on YouTube. If you're focusing on LinkedIn, stay on LinkedIn. And then once you feel like you've gotten a good handle on it and a good
Mhm.
grip of that audience, then you can expand and focus on another thing, but without losing the momentum of the first platform
I
that
love
you
it.
initially started on.
Love it. Love
Yeah.
it. Thank you. There's 4 questions. What kind of things are you doing? It looks like you're doing in-person events. That totally follows with the audience. A lot of the companies that are tech that we work with, they love in-person events. And they're not, they like maybe 5 or 6 years ago, folks were investing in like video and that sort of stuff, but it seems hard, right? Video can be really hard. But what we're trying to say to you is, it's not as hard as you think. Yes, it does help to get some help from an expert like Priscilla or like the team at Change 3. And we actually work together with amazing creatives, including with Priscilla. But either way, video is not as hard as it used to be, is the point that I'm making. So the next question, besides what kind of leadership you're doing, how do you nurture? So, right, how are you guys nurturing people with your progression activities? Do you send them gifts? Do you, connect with them on social media? What are you doing? So I would love to see your answers there, people. Third question is, how often do you want to get in touch with your audience? Awesome. So it's when you have something interesting to share. I see that. But so Priscilla was just saying, be consistent. So work, this is a great time to start thinking about how can you be that consistent voice so you actually do have something interesting to share. I couldn't agree with you more. Monthly is a good time. That's actually what our cadence is with a lot of our audiences, is once a month as we're building our programs. In certain segments, we might even try twice a month. I think that's it. But some of these brands are out there, they're providing content and information daily. Some brands are out there providing it every day. I'm not suggesting that for a growing business like, the folks that are in this discussion, but you work up to it, right? The biggest insight that I can give everybody, which we're learning from our own journey, is you start small, like a mustard seed, right? It's teeny, almost, you can't almost see it, but when you plant it, it grows into the biggest plant in your garden. It actually becomes a tree, right? And you can build upon it. And so that's really the most important thing is to just start small, work your way up, right? And work your way through it. And then the last one is the last question in our poll is, what are your challenges? So that's really where I'm going to focus in on. And we're going to actually expand this. To the folks who couldn't make it today, we got a few people who had to cancel. I guess we're at the end of the quarter, so I know how it is. It's quarter close, the end of the third, getting ready for the fourth. But that's okay. We're staying just like what Priscilla said. We stay consistent. Once a month, we have our Growing Happily series, and we invite small and growing businesses across industries, including tech, to join us, and we talk about the things that can boost or battle with your growth plan. So what are challenges? Managing the engagement. Oh my gosh, we do provide that service for a bunch of clients, which is reading the comments, filtering the comments, because there's some stanky people out there. I get it. And so, how do you stay on top of that? I've seen clients solve that in a few different ways. And that takes me to the second challenge, which is staffing or capacity, right? So some of our clients hire, like, young people. I've seen a client hire a woman who was actually coming back into the workforce. You hire someone that's kind of like a jack of all trades, like an assistant, so to speak. And a lot of our clients, their marketing department is comprised of like assistants, these assistants that might do your email campaign, or maybe they monitor your social media. This is a solid approach, but what we would strongly recommend that you do is actually work with a partner, right? Work with the assistant and a partner to, bring your authentic voice forward, but also have the benefit of that expertise. What are some other challenges that you guys, might be facing? So let's see. So it's really the engagement and the staffing and the capacity. All right, so that's it. Thank you guys so much for the poll. So you've got good chance. We're going to notify you on email, the person that wins. I'm going to share the results now. So about half of you guys, what did I do? Did I do something wrong? See, again, learning new skills. So that's the other headline when you are trying to build real business relationships through virtual channels is it's always learning new skills. You start small, you work your way up, you pick the platforms where you're most comfortable in, and you just build on that. All right. So as we wrap up our conversation, I wanted to say thank you everyone for joining us. And I wanted to talk about the last thing, which is, so we've talked about how do you start those relationships. We're talking about creating video content, showcasing your thought leadership. It might be even just producing more content so you're showcasing it. We talked about nurturing those relationships with a strategy and approach. You can use GIFs. You can use responses to comments in your posts. You come up with a strategy where you can interact with people one-on-one. And then the last thing is, well, how do you actually start to progress those relationships further? And so this is last part, which is about planning and strategy. So I wanted to actually explore some challenges, and I'm gonna go get my notes here that I wanted to talk about, which is one of the things that we find a lot with our clients who generally sell complex business solutions, and they're like, social media is not really a great platform for me because it's not, my customers are, industrial. Let's say we take an industrial company and they're industrial, they don't spend a lot of time on social media or not for business, right? And they feel like it's in an inappropriate platform. So what I really want to do is I want to challenge everyone. They're thinking about that. If you look at the research, people spend hours and hours per day in digital media, particularly social media. So Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, YouTube, you name it. If you add them all up, all these digital platforms, even Amazon, when you add the mobile apps, the mobile games, the social media, it's like, I'm not kidding you, it's like 5 to 10 hours a day that people are in these experiences. And so you might say, well, my brand doesn't align with, these consumer type of experiences. But what I would challenge you is that, generations are changing, right? Times are changing. The winds are changing. And it's not to say to get into that environment and to be like a sore thumb, like the guy who, dances funny. You don't want to do that. As Priscilla said, you want to make sure you're appropriate in each platform. But here's my challenge. And Priscilla, see if I can get you on board with this. So what I try to do is I try to go, okay, what would be the hardest thing that I could communicate in, say, Facebook or a TikTok, right? So let's see. My husband does construction, and so he gets stuff that I've never even heard of. Loctite. That's a good example, right? If you haven't fixed anything or screwed pipes together, whatever, you have no idea what it is. But apparently, it's this goo or some kind of a film or something that you put on pipes, and when you screw them together, they lock tight, right? And
Right.
you can put it
Yeah.
on screws and stuff, right? So then, and it's
Yeah. Yeah.
really important for machinery because it's all vibrating and stuff, and so you screwed the bolt on there, but it'll wiggle it loose, right? So you use this stuff called Loctite. So you'd be like, oh no, you can't put that on Facebook. Like, what are you gonna communicate for Loctite on Facebook? So that's our challenge. And I have some ideas, but I'm putting you right on the spot, Miss Girl.
Oh man,
So
I
how
love
would
this
you
game.
communicate
I
something
love
like
this
that?
game. How would I market it? Loctite?
Yeah, how would you market Loctite on Facebook? So, like I said, it's some kind of a film or some kind of goo that you put on screws and pipes, anything that you screw together, and that's to keep it from vibrating apart, and coming loose. So, how would you
Well,
communicate that on Facebook?
first approach I would communicate is testimonials, but not just testimonials
Mm.
of someone saying, "Oh, I love this." It's them film it and ha- resharing what other people are talking about. And when
Hmm.
other people talk about your business, that right there
Yeah.
is very inexpensive marketing. They're doing it for
Yeah.
you. So
Yeah.
resharing what other people are saying, I would have a campaign of hashtag Loctite or hashtag like how it
Yeah.
has benefited you or creative
Yeah.
ways that you've used
Yeah.
Loctite and then
Yeah.
reshare what other people are creating and posting. And so right there, they're already doing the work. They're filming, they're editing, they're coming up with the fun ideas, and all
Yeah.
you're doing is sharing it. So you're having them
Yeah.
talk about you. So that's
I love
one thing
it.
I would do. The second thing
Hmm.
is, of course, like the hashtag. So that way you have to somehow be tagged in these videos. So create a campaign of
Hmm.
unique ways this has helped you. What is
Hmm.
it called again?
Hmm.
I forgot it.
Loctite.
Right?
Loctite. Yeah.
Loctite.
Loctite. Lock
Yeah,
right.
yeah. Right. Loctite.
Mhm.
Unique ways Loctite has. I don't know. I would also come up with like a unique slogan like uh um I don't know. I need a second to think about it. Like my brain now, all of a sudden, I
Yeah.
can create a whole
You won't
strategy.
break up if you use some Loctite, right?
Yeah, yeah. That'd be funny. That's kind of like off the top of the head of what I would do.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. You know what I really appreciate about what you just said, and I want everyone to be thinking about that is you might be thinking like in that case, most of you guys probably don't sell something industrial like a Loctite, but maybe you sell, managed security services, or maybe you sell, a particular type of server or a system, or you go in there and you help sell something in a data center where it's like a really unique audience, and you're thinking like nobody knows what that is. Like Priscilla was like, is it Lockbright? Is it Loctite? So how can I go on a platform as open and public as like a Facebook and share that? Well, here's the thing, people are learning things all the time, and good content is good content, right? And the people that you're trying to talk to, they're going to definitely, there's technology that you can use to target just them. We use it all the time. So you can, build that audience and only present your information, your ads, your posts, things like that to just those people. But let's go back deeper, and example that you gave about the testimonial, I love it, right? And so it's going to be like, because the people who are using your products don't look like us. It's going to be, the dudes with the grease, and, they got the big wrenches, and they're doing stuff, and they're like, look at that. I can't even get this off. I got to heat the pipe and hit it with a sledgehammer, and that's the only way, right? Or whatever. And the folks that matters to would get into it. But, some folks might be like, they'd like to see a man hit a pipe with a sledgehammer. You never know, right? And so you can get some engagement. The other thing I would say is, there's always facets of, your offering or how you go to market that would interest a broader audience and help you start those conversations. So like, um, a great example is, like sustainability. What's your policy as it relates to, corporate social responsibility? How do you source your products? What's your approach to an internship program? How do you serve your community? Those are all facets. One of our clients has a big scholarship program in their, local area. And they've gotten some great stories of, college or students that have won their scholarship, and they're just incredible. And they've got these love letters, from these scholarship winners. And that goes back to the point that you were making, Priscilla, which is a testimonial. So, how do you get testimonies? Testimonies aren't just from your customers. Testimonials could be from your employees. Testimonials could be from your partners and your suppliers. It's really people telling, the story of how, your business, how your solution, how your offering is making their lives better. And so those testimonials are really important to share and to showcase and to encourage, right? And of course, your employees have their testimonials about what they're doing and things that they're sharing and how to's. So, all
I
right,
think,
do we want to come up with one more? Why don't you give me one, Priscilla?
oh,
Because I threw one at you. Throw one.
dude,
Let's see, you can throw
you
one
have
back.
brands too. Okay. All right. This is okay. Hold on. Well, look, can I think of one? I think we got a question. Let
Oh,
me think of
good.
one
Yeah.
and let's answer that.
Mm.
What are your suggestions when competing with internal brands within your organization without
Oh,
overposting, avoiding spam-like feeling?
oh, I love this. So let me break that apart. So you're in a company, you've got multiple internal brands, and they might all be different. Let's talk about it in two scenarios. One is where they're similar brand, like the BMW model, right? They're all BMWs, but they're different models. And then the other option would be the GM model, right? The GM approach, which is all different brands, but they all go to the one parent. So how do you handle that? Let's take the BMW approach, which is all of them map up to your company's brand, but each of these solutions are distinct. And you're competing for eyeballs and attention from for the most part, probably the same type of a buyer,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
Maybe it's an IT manager or it's a, line of business executive, and you all want to present your offering to that particular target audience. So how do you differentiate without spamming or being too much? I think the best thing you could do today is three things. Number one is to think about what are the questions that you're trying to answer for your customer, and to create experiences where they're going to get that answer. So like this webinar is a good example. We've got a bunch of questions we want to answer for our clients. So like right now, we want to help you start real business relationships through virtual channels. And so we hosted this, and our turnout is a little bit low, but we're just starting this series. And what we do is we're going to take this content and turn it into other content, things like what Priscilla talked about, and build our brand that way. And we're starting out small and we'll work our way up. So one way is for you to think about what are the questions that you want to answer, map that out, and to think about how can you answer those questions in interesting ways. Videos, blog posts, other content, web events, things like that. And this is where you can get creative. And so you were saying, how do I avoid being spammy? Because I don't want to be emailing or marketing to these people and constantly trying to present the same information. So this is where non-traditional channels become really interesting. For example, Reddit is a very interesting platform for tech companies, those subreddits, and like a lot of techie or people who are really interested in something, they go deep. So this would be where you might funnel your creativity. You might have been spending a lot of money on doing email campaigns or what have you, or maybe you're spending a lot of money on live events. Well, you might want to spend a little bit of that money and think about a strategy. So as Priscilla said, you could consistently post in a Reddit. And there's so many funny ones, right? I saw one that was like breaded, right? And it was all about baking bread, right? And you spend some time getting really creative. And how can you use a platform like Reddit to build deep thought leadership, to create that community experience? And Reddit has some amazing advertiser tools as well. There's ads, so you can actually start to sponsor, those eyeballs. You can start to think about how do you build a matched audience, because your audience is going to be specific. You don't just want any Reddit user. You want certain people who fit your criteria. So that would be where you use ID graph tools. They're third-party tools. You can upload a list. There's loads of ways. There's all things we can help you with, of course. But you want to be looking into those things. So that's number one, is non-traditional platforms. Number two is, having that strategy where you're going to answer those questions. And then number three, how do you not compete, right? How do you not compete? So you try to find a niche. So of course, the all of the buyers who like BMWs might want, whichever your BMW is, but there's going to be a niche that your BMW was ideally suited for. So go hard, go deep on those people. And like really think about, how do you find them? Where are they? How do you really go deep? Create loyalty, and create a program where you are focusing only on those guys. That's not to say you're casting you're not talking to anybody else, but you want to go deep to those users that's really ideally suited for what you're offering in that case. And you're looking for non-traditional channels and answering those questions that they have uniquely about your product, so you can build that deep loyalty in that group.
I want to add on
Priscilla,
to
what
what
you
you
think?
said.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so when you were talking about the spammy, what I would recommend too for your approach is, if you have an email list or a lead list currently and you're worried about sending information to the wrong person, I would recommend doing A/B testing, and depending on the headline, and try to clean your list up. So if you have a list
Yeah.
of one big bucket, try to clean them up and make sure that whoever is in that bucket is who you're talking to. Now, right now, you probably have a big bucket and they're all just kind of just in there, right? And that's how you're communicating to everyone. So it's going to take some time. So be patient with yourself and try to start cleaning up this list of putting people in the right bucket. And you can do that by organizing your lead generator in your social media, your LinkedIn, however you're trying to get people to sign up for information. Make sure that when they sign up for your lead generator, that they're clicking what they want to be in and what they want to hear about. So you're already starting there. So that's how I would start approaching that. And then if you're not sure, that's where I would go back to the A/B listing. And then you're going to see who cares about what in that list. Because you can look at who opened up the
Yeah.
email list A or email list B, and you can start cleaning it up that way. So that's how you're going to try to start being less spammy. And then to also tag on to, honestly, Nico, I would have said the exact same thing. Your niche needs to be clear. And I was giving advice to a wedding venue, and they're a wedding venue, but then they're also a retreat center where
Mm.
you can rent it out, and there's bunkhouses all over the property and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But they're like, really need to focus on both. Well, ask yourself this question: how many people are in both buckets? It's probably 1%. You don't want to market
Yeah.
to 1%, right? That's
Yeah.
too
Yeah.
small. You want a
Right.
broader approach. And so I don't be scared to create another handle or social media where it targets that audience. So
Oh, good point. Yeah.
wedding page, and then also a retreat page. So whatever your
Yeah.
business, if you have multiple different businesses within, create different pages for each area. So that way, whoever is in that bucket, they're very clear on why they're there. They're not confused, like, wait, why all of a sudden am I watching wedding stuff? Am I
Correct.
signing up for
Such
venue
a great
things?
point.
So
Yeah.
don't be afraid to start over when it comes to
Yeah.
that, and to clean up both the pages. So that's what I would
Yeah.
recommend. That was a great question. I love that.